All right, about 45 minutes into this little trip, throwing my War Eagle spinnerbait around, and a little 14-inch largemouth come to say hello. See you, buddy. Been a really slow start. I haven't seen any movement at all. I've seen maybe a couple of bluegills dinking around up in the pads, but really nothing. Hi everyone. I had a request from Ed Bogan to show a wacky worm, and I'm glad to do that. The thing I'm going to tell you about a wacky worm that I really like is that it's really a good lure even if you're bank fishing, because it's easy to keep near the top of the water and you can stay out of all the brush piles and weeds and everything, and it'll keep you from getting hung up. So I love to fish a wacky worm, and I've been doing a lot of it this year. And so let's get into it. Let's take a look. Basically, you're looking at a stick worm, and they come in a variety of lengths, but I use only two. This is the 5-inch that I use, and this is a 4-inch. And I'm really limited on the colors that I use. There are a ton of colors you can pick from. By all means, whatever you're comfortable with, just jump right in there and use it. But in the summertime, I'm going to go with a green color. This is a green pumpkin right here. This is called ghillie suit, and it's basically the same as the green pumpkin. The difference being that this one has little colored sparkles in it, so it's kind of cool. And then the other green that I use is the watermelon green. And this summer I've been doing really well with the baby bass. Now, depending on the brand that you buy, some call this watermelon pearl because it's got a watermelon green back and a pearl side. So that's a good color. In the springtime, I like colors with red because for some reason the bass seem to key in on the red. This particular one right here is called oxblood red, and very similar to it is called bourbon berry. And I like both of those. They're absolutely great when it comes to springtime fishing. All right, now we know what we're using, a stickworm to make the wacky rig. So let's get into tying it on, and I'll show you how I do it. All right, so now there are two different types of hooks you can use for a wacky rig. One is this wide gap finesse hook, and the other I use is a 1/0 wide gap worm hook. I started out fishing this rig exclusively with these hooks, but I have since switched. Now I'm using a 1/0, and I believe this is a 2/0, but I'm using a 1/0 wide gap. And I'll tell you why I did that. There were a lot of times when I would get a fish to bite this rig and he would come undone, and I think it's because I didn't have enough hook through the worm once I got the set. So I'm going to tie this, and I'm going to use my standard Palomar knot. So you go through the hook eye, you go back through again, and you create this loop. Now here's the trick to being good at this Palomar. Pinch that tag end and your line in your finger, and don't let go of that until you're done. Tie an overhand knot just like you're going to tie your shoes. Put that through the loop, open it up, put your hook or your bait through. Now when I'm doing this, I put it on my fingers so that when this hangs down, all I have to deal with is just that loop. I put my finger in there. I'm still not letting go of that tag end that I had in. And I pull that up until that line pops over the top, just like that. And I'm not tightening it until I get it down to the hook eye. And that's critical because you don't want to churn and burn and flatten out that line. And you don't need to wet the line when you do it this way. And I'll prove that to you here in a minute. So I'm going to cut off my tag end, and that's a Palomar knot. Now the reason I say I'm not flattening that line is because if you look at it, it's no crinkles in it, it's flat. and it's round. So flat and it's round, that's kind of a contradiction. It is round, which means it is not flattened out, and it's still got its full strength. On the Wacky worm, what you're going to do is take this stick worm, and as close as you can eyeball it to the middle of the worm, just poke straight through so that your hook point comes through like that. And you'll know you've got it close if you let it hang and it hangs evenly. If it were uneven, one end would be drooping down and the other would be up. But this is hanging pretty close. And that's it. That's a Wacky worm. And when you bring it through the water, that's what it does right there. That action is what triggers the bite, just like that. Don't know what it is that the fish like about that, but that's a Wacky worm right there. Next time I go to the water, I'll get some more footage of this in the water, and you'll see how it works. Now, the great thing about these stick worms and using a wide gap hook like this is if I'm on a lake where there's a lot of vegetation and the Wacky worm is just not working out for me, I can take that off and I can come up here, put it through, and Texas rig this thing. And what you do is once you get the bend of the hook buried, just eyeball it and see where your hook goes through the worm. Come down here and stab that through so that when you get finished, see how straight that worm is? There's no kinks, there's no bends, nothing. And I'll usually skin hook that. Now, I can throw this up in the lily pads or the weeds or anywhere else, and it is weedless. Hey Ed, thanks for asking. I'm glad to show you. Anytime any of you guys have a question about how I'd rig or how I do anything, just let me know, and I'll be glad to show you. Bye.